All right, ladies, we are live. Not really. This is a recording. We're not. So I was trying to get a little bit of reading done and going over my notes earlier when the session was, they were singing and everything, and it was beautiful to hear. However, I couldn't focus at all because the recorder back there, the speaker back there was very loud. So hopefully this is not broadcasting anyplace. So how many of you drive and use GPS, but you like, first of all, to look at a map to see where you're going? I'd rather, yes. So our daughter lives, she moved down to Jackson, Ohio, which is 2 hours from us. And the first time I went down was when they moved, and driving home by myself, because for whatever reason, nobody else could help them, or they came in a different car, whatever it was. It was through southern Ohio, all these roads, and the GPS kept changing routes on me. And then I finally, it was a stormy, dark night. And it had me turn, and the road was blocked, and there were men in the road. It was like, ah! So I really like to have a map and know where I'm going. If you want it up here. Do you want me to move this?
I think you're good.
Okay, all right. So anyway, that is my hairy, scary. And it turns out they were line workers. The electric was down. And I was talking to a friend. She said, oh, my son was probably on that crew. So it wasn't really dangerous, but it felt dangerous. So not that there's any danger in not knowing where I'm going with this, but I do like to let people know. So I've got 12 quick little points. Some of them will take longer than others. But the first thing I want to know is, why did you come to this room, to discipleship? What are you hoping to get out? You Are My Encourager also is kind of the subtitle there. So give me, a couple of you, just tell me, what are you thinking you might get out of this? Or it's just like, well, I had to pick something, so I thought I'd pick this. All right, somebody talk, or else I'll start pointing.
Well, it's been on my heart so much to be a mentor, especially to my children. And that's what stood out to me.
Perfect. That's perfect. Great.
Learning more. Like, I love reaching out to people, but sometimes I feel like I need direction as to how do we do this?
Yes, perfect. That's great. We'll be talking about that. Anybody else?
To encourage others more, is basically helping others like they can.
Talk a little louder so they can hear you.
Okay. How to be an encourager to other people.
How to be an encourager to other people, how to mentor your children. I realize I should be speaking because of the recorder. And you said?
Just how do we go from here? I love reaching out to young women.
Reaching out to young people, and how do I go? How do I do that? Good. Very good. Thank you. We are going to, and this is not necessarily, I don't need an answer on that, but so that's the why you're here. I want to go over and define what discipleship is, look at what the biblical mandate for discipleship is. It's not just a good idea, it's a God idea, and we want to look at a little bit of the scriptures on that. And then, how do we see people? How does Jesus see people, and how do we see people? Why should we each disciple somebody? And are you fit to be a discipler? And how to find someone to disciple, kind of what you're saying. And then I want to talk about well groups, and that is Women Encountering the Living Lord, and that is a small group-based discipleship. And then The Gentle Art of Discipling Women, which is this book. And there are just, when I went up there this morning, I said, how many do you have left? And she said, just what you see. So there's about 6 left upstairs. And she said she can order more. This is an excellent book. There's a lot of really good books on discipleship, but this one was the how-to manual, and totally biblically based. I really, really, really like it. I'm actually going to be teaching. So here's a commercial. I'm going to do a few commercials too. In 2 weeks, we're having a ministers and missionaries retreat, ministers' wives and missionaries retreat at our place on discipleship. And so if your husband is in ministry, or if you've been a missionary for a number of years, there is a paper on the back table. And pick it up. There's no charge for the retreat. The information I need is right here. And we will be going over this book in depth. So one more commercial. This is a book that we have on our table upstairs. And my husband wrote it. And they told him, if you can get the manuscript to us tomorrow, we will print it immediately. Otherwise, it's going to be a couple months. So he had to hurry up and do a cover. And he does not like this cover. I do, because it's his bubble writing. But it's my personal notes for the unique and radical child training seminar by Don Howe. This information has the potential to change your life forever. So this is a book, especially you're talking about children. This is kind of what we did to raise our children, I guess. And it's easy reading because it's not like reading a long chapter. It's almost like a devotional guide. Like you can, not guide, but devotional, like read this section. You can open the book and go this way and read this section. You don't have to read the whole thing. Recently, somebody wrote to Don and said, that's such a great book. And we really respect this man and how his children turned out. So it's like, well, good. Glad somebody liked it. I mean, I'm not saying other people don't, but sometimes you don't hear how people like it. But that is free, and it's up on the table that says Shepherd's Retreat. And also on the table that says Shepherd's Retreat, there are sign-ups for volunteers. So if anybody wants to come and help cook, you all are local to us. You're only 2 hours away. We're importing people from Indiana and Pennsylvania. For our mission retreat, we have people coming from all over the U.S. But we'd love to have some of you join us. We've already got Marianne's been helping out some, and it's been a real blessing. All right. Does anybody have a question right now before I really start moving in? And this, by the way, does anybody want to know why we're sitting like this instead of in rows? Because a circle is inclusive. I'm not teaching a class. This is conversational. I want you to interrupt. Well, not totally interrupt. I mean, you can. But I want it to be something where you're really hands-on with this. This is not point A, point B, point C, okay, now you know how to do it. This is well, I've done this, have you ever tried this, or what happens if this happens? So, I apologize. When we have retreats, I facilitate it, and so there's a lot of discussion back and forth, but I don't do a lot of just write-out teaching, so you'll just have to understand that. So, ladies, are Christians the only ones who can be disciples of someone? Okay, so we are disciples of Jesus. Would you agree with that? So are Christians the only ones who can be disciples of somebody? Okay, can you think of somebody who had a lot of disciples? And I shouldn't say there's no wrong answer, but when you think of somebody following somebody, who do you think of? Hitler was the first one I thought of. Who else from India? Who? Pardon me?
Was it
Gandhi, yes. Yeah. And those are the two that I came up with off the top of my head. But those men had ardent followers who followed them to the death. Can anybody quote a verse pertaining to discipleship? Can anybody tell me what a reference is? Matthew 28, 18 through 20. So, thank you. I want to mention that although my passion is to train ladies, to disciple ladies who can disciple ladies who can disciple ladies, I want to mention that not everyone at every moment, every day of their life should be in an active discipleship thing, unless it would be, you're saying, your children. And that is one reason why maybe you're not going to have another person you're discipling because you're very intentional with your children right now. I know someone who just had 1 year and then another year of youth in their home that took a lot of energy. At the same time, they're raising their family. And right now, they're in a hiatus. They're just taking a break. They're not doing any intense. They're discipling their children, but they're not doing any intensive weekly study with anybody because it's like they just need to debrief. So this is not saying everybody should do this, does not mean everybody every day. Does that make sense? I don't want anybody to go away from this saying this is one more thing to do. Yes.
It being one more thing too. We're probably all here because we want to
Yes.
do it. So we want some insight, some training for when that one day is. Maybe
Yes.
it's next week for somebody.
Right.
I appreciate appreciate that
Right,
thought, that it
yes.
might not be.
Thank you, thank you. So when I got married, lived in Columbus, Ohio, and it's like, I would think, what am I going to make for supper tonight? So I'd call my grandma. I'd be probably doing lunch dishes and thinking what I'm going to make for supper, but regularly I called my grandma, and she would say, well, this is what I'm making for supper, so I'd make that too. And she would share, she was born in 1900. I got married in 1979, 43 years ago, so you don't have to do the math. And I would call Grandma a lot. And she told me once, she said, when I die, a whole library of information is going to go with me because I know things that nobody else knows, and if I don't pass them on to somebody, and she intentionally shared things with me, and she intentionally shared things with other people. And so a lot of that library was passed on. Daniel Webster defined being a disciple as someone who accepts and helps to spread the teachings of a famous person. I can't really say my grandma was famous, but she was to me. But just think, that's basically the textbook definition of them. The Old Testament rabbis, who were very learned, had disciples who'd followed them around, and the rabbis would teach them what to do on a day by day. They'd have discussions with them. And that's the Old Testament role. Who's a rabbi that is very, very famous? It's not real hard. You know him. Jesus. So Jesus was a rabbi. He had a group of men and women. They don't always talk about it, but then you'll see different places where it'll say, and the women who maybe were with Paul or different places. But Jesus did have women. They weren't the disciples, but they were in the group that would move around with him. So if you have, and I know probably most of you don't, maybe you do, but if you have your Bible, could you turn to Matthew 28? I want to look at this. We're going to go to Matthew 28, 18 and 19. So this is after Jesus had risen from the dead. And it says in verse 16, but the 11 disciples proceeded to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had designated. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some were doubtful. And Jesus came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all of the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I commanded you, and lo, I am with you to the end of the age. So have you ever heard that when you're reading scripture and it says therefore, you're supposed to look what the therefore is there for? Have you heard that before? So that's what we want to look at right now, is what is the therefore. So somebody who has that or who just heard me, what is the therefore? What did Jesus say? Just read the passage again if you don't see it, because it's not real hard. It's not too complicated.
Because he has all power in heaven and in earth.
Yes. Therefore, Jesus, sorry, my handwriting is not great, has all power. My translation says authority. Does anybody else have another translation? So Jesus has the complete rule over everything in the world. And because of that, what are we supposed to do?
Go.
Pardon me?
Go.
Go. That's right. I thought you said vote. It's like, really? Okay, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. So what is a disciple? What did we talk about just a little bit?
Follower.
A follower, yes. Make a disciple, somebody who imitates, who follows. So why would Jesus have people following him around?
To learn from him.
To learn from him, yes. So discipling is, some of it's sitting down face to face and going through Bible study, but others is just saying, hey, come wash the dishes with me and let's talk. Or random phone calls. So is every woman that you talk to throughout a week, is that necessarily your disciple? Probably not. It's discipleship, at least in my mind, and I think by definition would be something that's a little bit more intentional. So we'll talk about that too. This is, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations. The Lord calls a lot of people to go all the way out to the ends of the earth. But other people, he starts right where they are at home, and that's where they're to reach out. And then maybe that person will go a little bit further out. And that person, and pretty soon you find out that the person you talk to, so I had a gal who cleaned for me for a while at the retreat, and she cleaned. I didn't disciple her a lot, but we were involved some, and didn't see her for a couple years. I saw her at a bulk food store. I said, so what are you doing? She said, well, I'm getting ready to go to Jordan. And she and her husband were going to Jordan, and they were there. She might even still be there. In fact, it's Celesta's niece. So this is teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And then what's the promise after that?
You'll be with us.
He will be with us till the end of the age. Have we reached the end of the age? No, so he's still with us. I mean, I know those are things that you all know. So biblical discipleship is intentionally and systematically passing on to others what I've learned from the Bible and from Christian life experiences, from others who've gone ahead of me and who've walked and talked the Christian life with me. Has anybody been in an intentional discipleship relationship? Either somebody discipled you or you have discipled them. Can you put your hands up? So, somebody want to share something that you learned from that experience in any way? There's no right answer on this one. I just want to hear, what was discipleship like in your life? And tell me, were you the discipler or you did the discipling? All right, there were a dozen of you that raised your hands. Somebody, please share.
Something that I am still learning is that I don't have to have all the answers.
Perfect, yes.
And sometimes there's questions that are brought to you and you just don't know. And in those moments, I'll often say, I need time to think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. Good.
Oftentimes there are no answers to some of the questions that they give to you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you just have to say, you pray and rest and have faith.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. Somebody else?
I think I learned just as much as the girl I mentored.
Uh-huh, yes.
Just by not having the answers.
Yeah, you've
Just
got to dig
asking
in.
the Lord
Yes.
and- yeah.
Thank you. Good.
And also just to listen.
And sometimes that's hard. Anybody else? So,
I also find
go.
that honesty is, I'm the type of person, if somebody talks to me, I want them to just say it how it is.
Uh-huh.
Not everybody can receive that as well. But sometimes if you disciple somebody, you have to say the hard things
Mm-hmm.
in a gentle way, but
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be willing to say that hard thing.
Very good. And kind of backing up from that, when you get into a discipleship relationship where you are mentoring someone, you want to talk about the expectations. So, yes, I'm your friend and you can come to me as a friend, but also you're wanting to be discipled, or maybe would you want to be discipled? It may be that you're asking them, I'm discipling, I'm looking for a woman to disciple, a girl to disciple. Would you want to do that? And then talk about the expectations. So how long are you going to do it? You want to do it like the course of a school year, September to May or June? Do you want to do it for a year? Do you want to do it for a year and then we each disciple somebody and I walk alongside you as you disciple somebody? But enter into a timed relationship. And that sounds kind of almost calculated and cold, but it gives a person hope because then they know what they're aiming for. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong on how long it would be. I would say not less than 6 months, unless somebody's, say, going overseas and they need to just have a 6-month intensive with you. Go over what will that relationship be like. Will it be, it's not just doing Bible study. Bible study is part of it, but doing life is a lot of it. And how often will you do it? Will you do it once a week? I would say no less than once a week. But maybe you'll do it twice a week. Maybe you'll do phone calls. We have, in our church, we started a program that is an outreach program. My mind always goes blank when I think of the name of it. But anyway, it helps people who have addictions, and quite a number of them have been alcoholics or drug addicts. And one of the ladies who just celebrated her 5th anniversary of being sober and no drugs just a couple of weeks ago, the lady who's mentoring her told me that every night this gal calls her to say goodnight and to say, I love you, because she just needs that affirmation. And it just kind of gives me goosebumps to think about that. So she came to the retreat that we had. We had a ladies' retreat from church, and this was 2 weeks ago. And when we have our retreats, we go around the room reading a book. And each person takes time to read. She wouldn't read out loud. I actually thought she was probably illiterate from some things she'd said to me, and she wouldn't read out loud. Then we broke down into small groups. And as we went around, I called her name, and she read. I thought, oh, okay. So then when we got back down the big circle, we started with the person there, and then she was the next person, and she read. Then later on, she'd never prayed out loud. In our small group, she prayed out loud. She's like on a fast-forward cycle of discipleship, really encouraging. She is sharing Jesus with all of her old druggie friends. So you can't always find a disciple like that, but what a blessing. So don't limit yourself on who you want to disciple, because she's just, and she struggles with depression. She's got a lot of things that are still hanging over her head from her days. So what I'm going on now, how do we see people? For me, personally, she wouldn't have been my first pick to disciple, because I don't even know why she wouldn't have been. But what do we look for, and what do we see in people? When we see somebody, how do we see people? Do we see people as Jesus sees people? That's, I guess, the question. And how did Jesus see people? There's a specific verse I'm thinking of. Jesus saw them as sheep without a shepherd. That's right. And not everyone you disciple will be in that situation, but you might get people who are really struggling. Maybe they aren't even saved. Then you're not really necessarily, I don't know. I guess that's just an early stage discipleship. So when he saw the multitudes, Matthew 9, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. So somebody give me 5 people. Shout out a descriptive name for a sheep. Like what? When people say, as a sheep. Dumb. Gentle. Meek, vulnerable. Yes, very good. All of those are right. And sheep need a shepherd. They need the shepherd to guide them where they're supposed to go. That's kind of what a discipler does. They lead that sheep. This is a verse that's really been convicting me, and that's one of the reasons why we're here right now. It says, then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech. And I wrote, beg with all your heart for the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. I have 2 friends that I pray with. I pray with my sister-in-law on Tuesday mornings at 7 before she's a teacher. And then I pray with another sister up in Michigan on Wednesday mornings. And about a year and some months ago, my friend from Michigan said, I am so distressed. She said, think about it. Think about the young girls today, our daughters' ages. How many of them come to their moms anymore to ask for child-rearing tips, et cetera, et cetera? It's like so often they go to their friends online, somebody they don't even really know their lives, go to Google it, you know what happens when a baby has diaper rash. but it's, and she said, what's wrong with us? Why is that happening? Why are we allowing that to happen? And so that, we started talking about that every week. What should we do about this? What should we do about this? And it was very convicting because it's like, yeah, I told you I called my grandma every night. My married daughters don't call me every night. We talk every week, but I thought I just have to be more intentional. So those of you who have daughters who are out of the home, I don't know what your relationship was with them, but maybe try and think about being, and maybe you're very intentional with them already. Maybe they're already calling you, but that is a really excellent form of discipleship, to just be more involved. Does anybody have kind of any points they want to jump off on that? Anybody else struggling with that? Anybody have an idea of how to fix that or help that? We've got a lot of different ages in here, so I'd love to have it, different people share.
I think I'm in the ditch on the other side.
Okay, tell me what that means.
I'm probably too much involved. When
Did-
you have a baby,
Mhm.
I want to be there.
And do they want you there? Good,
My
good.
husband's want me there too. But then, I just want to be too involved, I think.
Well, do they feel like you're too involved?
I don't know. They never tell me that. They're really
Well,
nice.
well,
Maybe you should
I
ask them.
ask them, but they go, no, come on.
well, then just take that. Take it. I just actually came from my daughter's house. She had her first baby, and so I was there about 4 days. Then I went to another conference, and I came to this conference. But she and her husband both were very happy. She told me over and over how glad she was I was there, giving her different breastfeeding tips and different things. It just really warmed my heart. It's like, good. So how many of you are intentional? Like one of my daughters who's out of the state, I have to really be intentional because she's got little children and it's hard to catch her at the right time. There's the right time for me, but I'm trying to be very much more intentional. And as I'm doing that, she's being more intentional about giving more time, if that makes sense. We'd kind of been drifting apart. Not really, but it was, even though it,
Yeah.
so.
I have something, like just yesterday I went through this, one of my daughters called me,
Can you, okay, I don't think they can hear you back there. A little louder.
one of my daughters called, wanted some advice, and of course I gave advice very quickly. And my husband was in the house, and after I hung up, he said, really, should you have given that advice? Maybe not. And I called her back, and I said, oh, I forgot, what did your husband say about it?
Uh-huh.
And she said, well, not the same thing you said. I said, okay, your husband comes first, whatever he said.
Good.
I said, from now on, don't ask me all the questions, because I give advice way too quickly.
So for those of you listening to this recording, she was talking about the fact that sometimes she says her advice too fast, and maybe first ask your husband, then ask mom. So, yeah. All right. Anybody else have anything you want to say there?
I found, go ahead.
Well, no, because this is a little bit off subject, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for me, I have 4 daughters, and sometimes the best time that they're open to talking is like when I'm in the middle of something very busy. And it's just lay that down, and it's been good for me to realize that.
Good. So when you're really busy, that's when your daughters need you the most, and you just have to lay it down
Probably.
and listen to them. Yeah. Good.
One thing that helps me in that is I wear Bluetooth when I'm on the phone with them, so I can keep on doing what I'm doing.
Okay,
I
so
also
wear a
frustrated.
Bluetooth and keep on going and doing what you're doing.
And I can talk and work at the same time.
Yeah.
Almost conversation flows better for me that way than if I'm just sitting.
Talk and work at the same time. Yes.
I have 4 daughters.
Yes.
That are married, 3 of them living out of state, and it is challenging to connect with all of them.
Yeah.
But I do have to be intentional.
So 4 daughters living out of state,
Yeah.
3 of them, no,
4 daughters that are married.
4 daughters that are married, 3 out of state, and you have to be very intentional. Go ahead.
One of my daughters just had a baby in January, and she lives in Tennessee. And I hadn't been with her a whole lot in the last year before, before she had the baby. So we rented an Airbnb about 5 miles from their house.
So rented an Airbnb.
And then I have, my youngest son is still doing high school, so he's at home doing that yet. And I also take care of my youngest sister, who's a special needs adult. So I took the 2 of them with me. My husband went traveled with us just for the
Mhm.
travel time. And I spent 16 days there with her.
Oh, great. You were able to spend
And
16 days down
I
there.
just had that connection time with the grandchildren. They could come to grandma's house,
Oh, yeah.
and it was wonderful. This was her third baby, and she just told me she thinks it was the easiest recovery.
Oh,
Just
the easiest
coming
recovery
there,
because mom was there. Yeah.
made their meals, and I was there, like you said, mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
here you think if I can't mentor my own daughters, I can't mentor other people.
Yeah, if you can't mentor your own daughters, who can you mentor? Yes, very good. Thank you.
I also, if I want to talk to my daughter who lives in New Orleans and she's a nurse, I'll just send her a text, are you working today? Can we talk?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sometime. She'll
Yeah.
call me back.
Yes. Yeah, so be available when your person is available. So, my daughter in Tennessee, they own a coffee shop. So I said, well, let's have coffee together this Saturday. And she'll call me with her cup of coffee, and I'll sit down with my cup of coffee, and we'll talk. And that's worked out really nicely. So recently, well, actually, let me go back. So we're talking about the sheep and the shepherd, and he said to his disciples that harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. So thinking of the harvest, that made me jump to Ruth and how she was there living and serving with Naomi, and she was sent to a field of somebody she didn't know. I'm sure it was a little nerve-wracking being the foreigner among all those. And she went to the field and started gathering the shocks of grain. And I'd read something about that, and it mentioned that the Lord of the harvest, I thought of it in a different way than I've ever thought of it before, so my mind is blank. Ruth and Boaz. So Boaz had a hired man that was the Lord of the harvest. I've never thought of it like that they would have a boss. How many of you are married to a farmer? You have farming. So, yeah, more or less. So anyway, they have people. I'm assuming that there are people who oversee the fields and harvesting. Is that right? If you have anybody has fields they harvest? Anyway, let me just go on from there. So we work for Jesus, who has the harvest. And the harvest, there is so much out there right now to harvest as far as men's souls and as far as developing believers to harvest and bring people to Jesus. But we're missing it. Recently, a few months ago, I was driving around and it was way past the harvest. It was a cold winter day, and there was a field full of pumpkins. I thought, why are those pumpkins all sitting out there? I mean, obviously I know they can till them under and that's part of it, but still, why was there so much that wasn't harvested? And are there people that we should be building into that could be then multiplying themselves and more? Because it's reproduction. It starts with me and I disciple. I'm sorry, yours, Ashley. There's light on it. So Ashley and I develop a relationship, and then in a year we both grab somebody. Now there's 4, and then we multiply it out. So if I were to give each of you the choice between $1 million right now or a penny doubled every day for a month, which would you choose? Penny, yes. It is millions and millions and millions of dollars. Back on the table, there's a sheet that shows the multiplication if we do discipleship in small groups and we disciple, and I'm going to show that to you in the paper in a little bit, but we could reach the world in anybody who's younger in 33 years. So some of us may not be here in 33 years, maybe we will be. My husband prays with a man who's 108. They pray every day. He has led 45,000 people, maybe 100,000 people. I don't know the numbers. He's led a lot of people to the Lord. And now he's at home praying for those people. Not at home in heaven, he's at home in a nursing home. So are you fit to be a discipler? And what would be the first prerequisite to be a disciple of Christ? It's a very simple answer.
Follower of Christ.
Follower of Christ, born again. You have asked Jesus to be your Savior, your sins are forgiven. And then, yes, to follow. So, and I would add one more thing, that there's no sin in your life that is really holding you back and you're balking against God and repenting of. That would be probably the only other thing that I can think of that would prevent you. And I'm not saying that, okay, if you have all these in a row, go right now, you've got a disciple. I'm saying that those would be the things. You have to be a born-again person. You have to be living a righteous life. That doesn't mean you don't ever raise your voice against your children. It means that you repent of it then. Is there anything else that would keep us from being a discipler? So here are a few things that that I would want in my life, and I would, because then you want to multiply. You want to have the other gal do the same thing. So daily reading the Bible, and then journal down what the Holy Spirit says to you. Meditate on those verses, and share the thoughts. I haven't been doing it lately, but there was a time in my life when the church we were in was a young church. We were an outreach church at Ohio State University. And we would go out on campus, we would see people saved, and then we would disciple them. And every day we tried to share our quiet time with somebody, share the thought. And it was really good, a very good discipline. And I wish I was still doing it, but I need to work on that. So then also study the Bible, and that may or not be an everyday thing. It might be once a week you study. Maybe you'd be studying with the gal you're discipling. And that you would have a prayer life spontaneously, systematically, corporately, and without ceasing. I mentioned that I just came from a prayer conference, and the man who was leading it said, we Westerners really don't have a good biblical idea of prayer. He said, prayer is, most of the time you see prayer, it's not an individual thing. I mean, we talk about, no, well, I prayed about this, I prayed about that, but it's like, no, it's corporate. You should be praying with somebody. So if you've got something to pray about, call somebody. It was interesting, so the morning that he shared that, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I got a text from a gal at church, and she said, I just had a terrible nightmare that my children were under attack. Would you please pray with me, like under spiritual attack? And so we texted our prayers back and forth, because I was in a hotel room with other people, and we prayed and feel like we had the victory then. But then I texted her later and said, I'm so glad you asked me to pray with you, because this is what this brother just taught us, is that prayer should be corporate. I'm not saying never pray alone. I'm just saying more often pray with other people. Also, talking about this, just a little tidbit extra on prayer. Do you know that a prayer closet is not like a closet where you hang your clothes? This man, his name's Daniel Henderson. You could look him up. He's got really good stuff on prayer. Anyway, he took his wife on a tour of Ireland when she turned 40, and they went and toured the king's castle. And on the itinerary was seeing the king's closet. And it's like, yeah, why are you taking us into the closet? The closet during these old times was not a room for clothes, it was a room for meetings. So we have it wrong. It was a room for everybody to get together to meet. So when you go into your prayer closet, you're going together with other people to pray.
I have a question.
Yes.
Then how does that relate to the verse about where he says, go, but thou wilt now prayest? He was talking about the Pharisees who make much show of their prayers. And he says, but thou wilt now prayest, go into that closet, and the Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. How does that correlate to what you're teaching?
And he taught on that, and I don't remember exactly what he said, but it's not...
Not that I think it's wrong to pray with others, certainly. That's
right.
I'm just trying to find the balance here.
Right, and I can't remember what he said, but it has something to do with the fact that, yes, you can be with other people, and it's still in private. It's not like out on the street corner where it's like, it's not like...
Show.
It's not for show, right, yeah. So just kind of a change of thought right now. How many of you, when you hear a siren, stop and pray? Okay, put your hands up really high.
I don't all the time.
Yeah, not every time. Okay, so my mom taught us that when we were really little, and she learned that when she was in grade school. And I always thought that was just something unique to us. And recently I asked another group, and it was the same thing. I thought, well, praise the Lord. What a really cool thing that so many of us do that. One time I heard a siren, and I just thought, I have got to really pray. And the Lord gave me very, very specific things to pray for. So, just pray for the people affected with that, and then just say, Lord, is there anything specific I should be praying for? And then pass that on to the person that you're discipling, saying, this is what happened, and this is what I did, and this is why I did it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, how do you, I've had somebody that's kind of been a burden on my heart, but I find it easier if somebody comes to me and says, will you be my mentor?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I don't know, and another thing, so our church just went through a thing where we made accountability groups. So I know that this girl is in an accountability group. And then I don't know, I feel a burden to reach out to her, but I don't know, should I, if she's now in an accountability group? Or how do you approach somebody and say, hey, do you want a mentor?
Well,
like, I don't want to be forward and be like, it has to be me.
right.
But I do have a burden on my heart already for a while, and I'm not sure how to handle that.
So on the accountability group, is there somebody in charge of that? Or I would say talk to them first and say, this is what I've been feeling. And then if they say, oh, yeah, this is not a closed thing, she can have our accountability group and you can disciple her, and then go to her. So ladies, I'm going to tell you something really that you probably will say, what are you talking about? You all need to be looking for fat ladies. Okay, fat is faithful, available, and teachable. If they're faithful but they're not available, then have a friendship with them, but you can't really disciple them if you can't ever get together with them. If they know everything and they really don't want to learn, they're not teachable, then you'll just have to rule them out too. Or pray that the Lord changes them and makes them, or point out to them, hey, do you realize you argue every time I say something? So I looked at my clock, it's like, it's 11:30. We've got lunch in 15 minutes. I can't believe it went this fast. Anyway, I've got 2 things to kind of put some action steps for you. This Gentle Art of Discipling Women is excellent. There are a few copies up there. She said she'd order more. If there's anything that you put $15 towards at this conference, I would say this needs to be the book. And then also, I don't think I mentioned my friend, the Women Encountering the Living Lord. Lynn Sieberhagen, who is a South African, she's a South African, and she is a visionary, and she and her husband, he had a church in South Africa. Then the Lord called them to, I think it was Uzbekistan or some Stan country. Do you know Stan means nation? So anyway, just a side tip for all those Stan words that you know. And when she got back to the States, then he was called to the States to be a pastor here, and that's how I met them. So she put together these discipling programs, groups, and I'm going to tear this off and show you how it works. So between the book that I showed you and what Lynn has put together is what I've been doing. All right. So I asked my friend, so here I am, Vickie, and I asked my friend Sarah if she would lead a discipleship group with me. She's the co-leader. And then I asked Diana, and actually somebody came to me and said, do you ever mentor? And so that's this person. Then we also added another Sarah and another. So there's 2 of us here, and then there's 4. And these are ladies that are pretty much, my goal in mind was not just to disciple them, but to disciple them so they would disciple. And in this group, so what I'm trying to say is if you want to disciple, consider doing it jointly with somebody else. And then ideally, and this is what I'm still working on, is Sarah talks to Sarah every week. Sarah talks to Lisa every week. I talk with D and A every week, and every week we get together. That's ideally. I am still working on making sure that happens. So I will confess that is ideal. And then at the end of a year, we're going to break up and take two people. Two people will end up with 3 groups. Is this making sense? So let's say we go together, and then maybe A and L go together. Maybe S and S go together, and we each grab 2. So now we've got 6 there. We each grab 2. There's another 6 and another 6. Now we've got 18 instead of 6. And then Sarah and I will still get together with each one of those leaders every month or every 6 weeks. We did something similar. We're doing something similar at church. And this past Saturday, we had our first leaders group. So all of the leaders where we'd broken off got together, and it had been years since the church had done anything like this, and there was so much. I can't tell you how much we needed this. Women need women. They need to be able to pray together. They need to be able to be accountable together. So this is, if this whetted your appetite and you say, okay, I really feel like it's time that I dig into this, I am offering 2 things. On the back table, there's a piece of paper. If you want to have, if you talk among yourselves, there's a piece of paper. It says, I would like to come to a session at Shepherd's Retreat on this, or I open up my home and I'll invite 10 people from my community who want to be involved with it, and I'll come up and spend 3 or 4 hours going over in more detail what it means to actually do this. So the Well group is designed for small groups that disciple. It's still one-on-one, but it's in a group. This book you can go through with one person or with a small group. The information that Lynn has with the Women Encountering the Living Lord is for more mature Christians. This you can start with a babe. So, anybody have, yes, Jackie, you have a thought?
And there's room in April.
Yes.
So,
And then if you are a minister's wife, deacon's wife, you've been a missionary in the not too distant past or for a large number of years, we have a retreat in 2 weeks that we're going to take 2.5 days for this. Any questions?
and we're going to be there.
Yes, yeah, and a bonus, Linda and Jackie will be there, and Marianne, you're coming? Yes?
Yes.
So,
And it's always a wonderful time.
any thoughts or questions?
Where did you say you're from?
Southern Ohio, southeastern Ohio, basically straight down 77, Caldwell. We have Shepherd's Retreat, which is why I'm offering to have it there, because we have a big room that we could get together in. Look up at the table up there with the pictures up there, and it gives some information. Hey, and ladies, please consider volunteering, even if it's just one weekend when we have a retreat. So, and if you have more questions, find me. I'll be here throughout the day.